We are recording. Are you ready to rock?
Roger that.
All right. Chat room. Yeah, well, of course they're ready. All right. All right. Here we go. It's 282, right? 282. Man, is that like a palindrome? I think it's a palindrome. All right, here we go. All right, here we go from the top. 3, 2, 1. This is Unfilter, episode 282 for Wednesday, May 30th, 2018. Happy Wednesday. It's Unfilter time again. This is Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly show about the news you shouldn't be watching. Yes, we are once again doing another roadshow edition of the Unfilter program. So if I'm here at Geek Gamer TV HQ, Mr. Chris Fisher must be somewhere out in the ether. Chris, come in, Chris. Are you there?
Hey there, buddy. Yeah, I am in Grants Pass, which we have taken to calling Grass Pass, Oregon. Which I came into this town thinking it was going to be like a gas station and 5 shops because we're getting some long overdue upgrades to Lady Jupes. I'll just really briefly.
Yeah.
We got some sumo springs installed in the rear.
Okay. All right.
And then we got some sway bars installed, and we've got a return to center safety bar for the steering wheel. And then we also fixed a lean that is very common to the F-53 chassis. All right. So anybody who owns an RV listening to the show will understand that. Anybody else I went into a different language.
Chris,
we're here in Grants Pass, Oregon, because
I was just going to say, this isn't the news we should be watching or listening to. This is RV chat. With
Yeah. No, it's just really brief. Wanted to set the context. So we're here in Grants Pass, Oregon, and I got into town yesterday for the shop, Henderson lineup. They're great. And they're doing the work, and the town loses internet yesterday. So yesterday was a rough day. But today, the work on the RV is done. At incredible expense later, I'm back in the RV, and we're here to do the show.
Nice.
And there is a lot to get into.
My.
Of course, there's our traditional cyber.
Yep.
We're going to go into the Russia investigation and Spygate as it stands. Then I want to spend a little time on North Korea and just the whole situation, the flip-flop that happened since we were on the air last week. And then, as always, buddy, we're going to wrap it up with a high note.
I love ending it on a high note, which is great because it makes us happy, makes us feeling good going into the end of the show after all the meat and potatoes, as you usually say.
I have seen just one more thing about Grants Pass, Oregon. It's a pretty cool town, really, and it's something that would normally be my speed, except for it's been this weird mix of folks that are doing crazy stuff on the road. Just like I've seen folks riding down on the top of a Suburban, sitting up on top of a sunroof. No shirt on, motorcycle helmet, just going down the road. I watched a motorcyclist, same thing, no shirt on, wearing shorts and a helmet, riding his handlebars. I don't even know how you do that, going down the street. People are it's a very eclectic town. And it's also where this coffee startup called Dutch Brothers started. And
is that
I don't know if you've ever heard of Dutch Brothers.
Really? Oh, I didn't even know that.
You've heard of them?
Oh, sure. Well, actually, they just opened up a location in Everett, Washington.
Oh, no way. Okay. Well, so they started here in Grants Pass.
Wow. Okay.
And so they're on literally every single corner. But I was talking to one of the mechanics who was working on the rig, and he says, the thing about Dutch Brothers is they're known to be a great employer. They now are at a position where they bought their own private jet, and they use that to fly employees to Hawaii as perks and just really kind of sound like a really cool company, and they're just everywhere here. Wow. Everywhere. And so, maybe if you see a Dutch Brothers in the future, I was at the epicenter of it at one point.
Well, I didn't realize they were a Northwest company, so now I may have to check them out here soon.
Yeah,
so that's
I think
awesome.
I might too. I might have to while I'm in Grants Pass before I go on. But what do you say we go into cyber? Because Grants Pass isn't on this list, but West Palm Beach and many others are on the top 10 most vulnerable places for cyber attack. Ooh.
A top 10 list you don't want to be on.
No matter where you live in our viewing area, a recent study found you are more likely to be a victim of a cyber attack.
News Channel 5's Andrew Lawfom live in Boca Raton to explain why and to show you how to check if you've been hacked. Andrew?
This is a new study done by the internet security company called Coronet. They're based out of Tel Aviv. Now, that study found just in Boca Raton alone that 15% of the population, which is way above the national average, don't even password protect their smartphones.
Wait, are you serious?
Yes, I know. So first of all, that's not hacking. That's
just stupidity.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, so it just gets worse from here. Like the low hanging fruit that we are now labeling as Russian cyber attacks or just cyber attacks in general is pathetic.
It's just common sense that people are lapsing on. Oh, man.
These are real hacks you can see, for example.
It's exhausting keeping up with the cyber attacks happening all over the world. Everyone is a potential target, and no matter where you are in our viewing area, you're more likely to be among the most vulnerable in the United States, according to a new study.
Not surprising, Florida in general, and even not surprising anything in South Florida, but to be that high on the list is always just another reminder that we need to pay more attention.
Alan Crowitz is Channel 5's internet security expert.
By the way, Chris, do you notice the well-placed ad poster right there, by the way?
Yeah.
I'm just framing for our audience. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Again, Chris, Chasing Chris Security Services, LLC.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Vegas is the most vulnerable. West Palm Beach is in the top 10 with Jacksonville, Orlando, and Tampa.
We have a retiring and elderly population that hasn't had the benefit of being around the internet their entire lives. We have a lot of money in the area, and the bad guys can sniff out money. And we have a transient population.
Passwords are the #1 thing you should protect, Alan says. Use a different and unique password for every login you have.
Let's take a look at one of mine.
To show us why, Alan is typing his email address into the website haveibeenpwned.com. It tells you if your email has been a part of a data breach. Now, mind you, he's our security expert, and he's been a part of 5, including LinkedIn.
So who cares if they have my LinkedIn pal?
Okay, so I got a comment here for a minute.
Yeah.
This is a security guy, right?
Yeah.
And he was caught on 5 different websites. That tells me he's using the same password for all these different websites. Now, you and I and our audience knows that you shouldn't use the same password for all these different websites. You should have a unique password for everything that you use. Right?
It just really, the Have You Been Pwned site is just, has your email address been in a database dump of passwords?
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily mean you use the same password.
No,
it just means it was the same user.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
But this is like, it's one of those things where, so they have this guy who's an expert who's got one of these stupid flash maps that is just constantly going off every time somebody's antivirus detects a cookie on a workstation.
It's a nice screensaver.
Yeah, and then make sure. So you think about that. You know, these must be like API feeds from like Symantec and all these antivirus and like all the different like appliance companies. There must be different data aggregation services that these maps are pulling from some sort of API. And there is no indication of what classifies as a cyber attack. You just have different colors,
right?
And you're supposed to be able to grok some sort of severity from that. So it's really kind of funny looking at these.
Well,
maps.
wait, do you think, Chris, that they might be using our former color-coded threat system? You know, red being the worst and blue being okay.
You're left to kind of assume that must be what it is. Like and the different sizes must represent the scale of the cyber attack as if it's a bomb. So this expert who's got these maps up on his screen because they look cool is going over Have I Been Pwned. So we're talking really low level stuff here. And
you want more
really,
of this?
We could probably leave it there.
Right.
It's just this is it's good information that needs to get out there. But again, I go back to we need to talk about it the right way. There needs to be a difference between security hygiene and actual attacks. Like we need to be distinctive in that.
Now, one story that kind of definitely perked my ears a bit was the FBI wanting to reboot our routers.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to hear your thoughts on this because my spidey sense was like, oh, come on. I mean, really? And I was just like trying to really analyze this. So let's take a look, I guess, at the clip first, and then we'll talk about it, right? So let's do it.
This morning on Rawson reports an urgent alert for all of us with internet routers. The FBI says Russian hackers could be infecting them with a crippling virus.
Today, national investigative correspondent Jeff Ross is here on what's going on and how we can protect ourselves. Hey, Jeff, good morning.
Hey, guys, good morning.
So obviously, we don't really know, do we? I mean, in this point, no, we don't.
It's right off the bat. It's dodgy.
Yeah.
The thing about attribution on any attack like this, it's difficult because if it's taken advantage of a vulnerability in the OS of some of these routers, like say a remote management port or something like that, it's usually self-spreading.
Right.
That's almost how all of these work, is self-spreading. So it's hard to say it's a Russian attack if it was developed in the Ukraine or it has Russian language even in the source code. It doesn't again even mean it's a Russian attack. It could just mean that it was an exploit, a worm that was developed in Russia and then sold on the black market.
Right.
So attribution's really tricky here. And that's just where they first start to go off the rails. And then when they go to their security advice expert, it gets really bad.
This new alert impacts all of us with Wi-Fi, so that's a lot of us. And this hack is especially scary because there's no real way to tell if your router has been infected. I often give you step-by-step directions on how to protect your personal information. This morning, we're back at it. And by the way, these tips may be the easiest I've ever given. So good news there. First, I want to show you what's going on here. The FBI has just put out over the holiday weekend this public service announcement.
News dump, by the way, put out over the holiday weekend, so they hope no one was paying attention.
And they want you to take action now. Here is a rundown of what we know right now. They believe these are Russian hackers targeting home and small office routers, so that's almost all of us. And security experts say more than 500,000 routers, 500,000 plus, have been infected so far.
How do they know that?
Yeah, it would have to be some sort of, like they did at IP blocks, scans of IP blocks of different ISPs, and then like these things return some sort of indicator they're infected, or it could be based on a sample. And they said, well, if this sample is infected, then it's likely that this many in total are infected. It's hard to say.
Yeah, I mean, not to be conspiracy theorist, but I thought this was just the ISPs telling the FBI, hey, can you get everybody to restart their routers? Because, we need to get a config pushed. And some of these routers are just, people haven't restarted them lately. So if we scare them, maybe.
Ooh, that's some good bacon.
I mean,
play them a bit more and I'll give you my theory.
All right.
So what does this malware do? The FBI says if your router is infected, hackers could collect your personal information or anything else you're doing online. They also say the hack can block your web traffic too, block it, and make your router inoperable. But you can minimize your risk. The advice from the FBI is that anyone with a home or small office router should reboot it right now. I did it this morning at my home. Before I came here, you should do it right now too before work. And the fix is really, really simple. So if you have Wi-Fi in your home or your office, you have a router just like this plugged into the cable or whatever you have.
Right.
All you have to do is unplug it. Unplug it like that. Wait for 30 seconds.
I swear this feels like tech support.
I know, it is.
It feels like,
it is.
You're not getting the internet speeds? Go ahead and reset your router or modem for 30 seconds. Yes.
That's it.
We can be done.
And then plug it right back in.
And plug it back in and you're done.
Yeah. We can be done with this guy. He's so obnoxious.
Yes.
Okay. So I know Wes is digging into this, and I haven't talked to him. I'm going to talk to him tomorrow, so my opinion could change. But so it's good to keep in mind what these routers are and aren't. They are really low power ARM devices, so they're not going to be great at doing mass amounts of spam or even some sort of reflection attack. What you really are going after on a box like this, if you are going to compromise it, is perhaps resetting the DNS to get the traffic to forward to your own DNS server.
Okay. Yeah.
This is something that I've predicted for a long time, because as users transition from Windows PCs, which were easy to exploit and a common target, so there was lots of code available, now users are on Android, they're on iPads, they're on iPhones, they're on Fire tablets, they're on Chromebooks. And so there's not a one common platform for the attackers to go after to create exploit code. So just to me, it seemed obvious you have to shift to DNS, because then once again, you get all of the devices. You don't have to compromise the device directly. You can monitor where they go. You can sneak ads in. You can do all kinds of great stuff. And it's possible, although unlikely that it's 500,000, but it is possible that a self-propagating type of worm that was, say, capable of detecting a certain type of Belkin, Linksys, and maybe Eero devices or something. And it is able to log into those and somehow create itself root access and then use them to reset the DNS. It's extremely unlikely, but it is possible. We've talked about it before on the TechSnap show. It has happened. It is a thing that happens. And here's why the reboot thing is such a big deal. It is, and it's just, we just recently talked about this in TechSnap. It is one thing to compromise a router. It is an entirely next level thing to compromise the firmware that is in a read-only state that router boots from when it reboots. So when you power cycle that router, you're clearing the runtime memory and you're booting from a read-only image that is written to firmware. It is possible on some routers to compromise that firmware. It takes extensive knowledge of those devices, and it involves exploiting a chain of exploits to get there. And it includes even activating a built-in backdoor account, and it's like a very complicated process, but you can compromise that firmware and then boot from a compromised firmware, but it's almost unheard of. And so if you reset these routers, you basically go back to the last time you saved a config.
Okay.
But the flip side to that is you go back to a vulnerable state.
Right. It doesn't
so
really.
They could just get it doesn't solve any problem.
Right, and that's what I was thinking too. Is just like, you're not changing anything other than in flushing cache or whatever.
Right. Now I'll talk to Wes, but what has typically happened in the past, and I believe what has happened in this case, is the FBI goes in and takes over the command and control servers of this worm or this bot or whatever you want to call it. And when they disable that command and control server, it kind of stops. It either stops propagating or it continues to propagate, but then it doesn't do anything once it gets there. And so if you reboot, it'll clear whatever job it's been given. Maybe that's DNS redirection, maybe that's NTP reflection, whatever it might be. It'll clear that out, and then when it boots back up, it still might get infected again because of the nature of the worm, but it will never get any control. It will never get any commands from the control server. Because I do believe I read that the FBI seized some servers related to this botnet right before this announcement came out. So it's possible that the reason why the reboot is such a big deal is because you essentially solve the problem, even though you still have a vulnerable system and you may still get infected. You essentially have immunized you because they now control those servers in perpetuity, whatever, which is not an uncommon thing for the FBI. They've also done that before in the past as well. TechSnap program, everybody. All of this is stuff we talk about. TechSnap.systems.
Very cool.
Yeah, all right. So why don't we go back to our bread and butter of the cyber?
Yes.
And let's talk about this big cyber attack that's coming that Russia must be behind. If they're so good, they're telling everybody about it.
Well, I mean, we've already talked about Russia being blamed, so now let's do some more blaming, I guess. Here we go.
Ukraine's security services claims Russia is preparing a large-scale cyber attack ahead of the Champions League final, due to be held in Kiev on Saturday. The allegation comes after a cybersecurity firm says hackers have infected 500,000 routers in dozens of countries. The malware is said to have been used in previous attacks that the US has attributed to Moscow.
Oh.
From a global standpoint, we saw this malware pretty much distributed evenly across the planet. All of that changed about 2 weeks ago when we saw a new command and control server pop up, and that command and control server specifically targeted Ukraine.
It's not known what the hackers
when the
had
FBI
planned.
got control of it. It's
Right.
very interesting.
Right, exactly.
Wow, I hadn't put that together before. I wonder what that's about.
Well, and now I hear that the 500,000 number is not just the U.S. It's
all over the world.
It's worldwide. Which, by the way, with 300 million people that live in the United States.
Yeah, exactly. They're making a big stink about this.
Change. Yes. There's only about 10 seconds more of it. You want more? Or what do you think?
Yeah, let it finish out, I suppose.
All right, fair enough.
Gives them remote access to infected machines. The Kremlin has not commented, but has previously denied accusations of being behind a global hacking program that has included interfering in the U.S. 2016 presidential election.
Had to get that in there. Okay, got it.
Yeah, so it's all tied together, right?
Yes.
And the thing that's remarkable is, like I said earlier, it's nearly impossible to put this on any one particular actor because of the way these exploits are distributed online.
Right.
But I want to play this clip of this real twit on MSNBC who I don't think this is going to get much traction, But this seems like it could be some plan B logic. Like, set the table for a moment. Let's say like the Democrats just sweep for the next few years. Sweep.
Right.
And they're doing really good, really strong. You could see a logic set in that allows what Trump did to be treason, because there's a little catch about this thing we like to throw around called treason. For treason to work, you have to be in a state of war. If you go read the definition of treason.
That's true. And there's no declared war, right?
There's no declared war,
right,
unless maybe we've been attacked and then we realize how severe the attack is, and then we could retroactively apply a state of war using this guy's logic. Go ahead and play this guy.
First of all, I don't lightly use this term. As you just noticed, the president himself misuses the term, and a lot of people do. But I went to the Constitution, and to commit treason, a person has to be at war with the country and provide aid and comfort to the enemy. Now, the question is, are we at war with Russia because the Russians were doing the hacking? And if so, then are they our enemy? I submit that because of the massive hacking and cyber attacks that were made on this country and on our election system, on our Constitution, that they rise to the level of an armed attack. And an armed attack is basically what the forefathers wrote this in the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see that a little bit. I mean, I can see that line of logic because, you know, an attack, you know, if you're actually crippling, or, you know, you're trying to take down, say, you know, those power grids that shouldn't be connected to the internet in the first place.
Yeah. Or maybe you're like making some things spin a little off kilter. Maybe you're maybe you're infiltrating a cellular network of an entire nation.
Yeah. But what about the hacking or the spoofing and spying that happens locally, like with those Stingray devices and things like that?
Yeah, so this is what I was thinking. It's like I could see this logic, like a real legitimate cyber attack that is like, it's like, let's just go for the one the media loves, is takes out the U.S. power grid. That does seem like an act of war to me. That seems like a pretty aggressive thing to do.
Yeah.
So the issue is how do you define Russia hacking the election? Because this is where it gets a little into the weeds. Because is it the phishing of John Podesta's emails? I'm not sure. I don't think so. Is it the probing of state databases? I don't think so, because that was likely the DHS. Is it the ads they bought on Facebook? Well, that's not hacking. That's just marketing. So was it the influence they tried to get into the Trump campaign? Well, again, that's not hacking, that's politics.
Right.
So what is the actual attack? The cyber attack.
Right.
You could make an argument that they tried to get in on certain campaigns, or they tried to peddle influence. Like, every nation does that. So I think that'd be a pretty easy argument to make. The thing that I can't wrap my head around is I actually don't know what the Russia hack was. We talk about the Russia hack so much these days. I don't actually know what it was. I can't think of what it was, because I don't even think the phishing attempt, like, that's the best I could come up with is,
well, the emails, the Podesta emails, right?
The phishing of John Podesta,
right,
and then releasing them via WikiLeaks.
Right.
But I still, to this day, I'm sorry, I remain unconvinced that Russia created that phishing email. That could have been anybody. That is a super, super common form of attack that I saw when I was young, when I was just a young kid, a pup in IT.
Right.
And I all of a sudden was responsible for taking on this email server.
Right.
Phishing attacks came in back then. We didn't even call them phishing attacks back then. But here I am. I'm like, I don't know. I think I was like 20-something, 20, 21, 22. And I'm sitting, all of a sudden I'm responsible for like a Qmail server, and I'm seeing all these attempts to try to get after our users. It's not a new super elite 4-dimensional cyber squad attack.
Right.
It's really basic. So I'm not convinced that that's the major Russia hack either. So I'm just left kind of uncertain of what we're even talking about anymore. But apparently it rises to the level of an armed attack.
It's something that, we still haven't seen a lot of the evidence, if you will, or maybe some of the fruits of these. What is it? The 12, 27.
We've seen some indictments. We've seen 13 indictments.
but the forms of these hacks, quote unquote. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm sitting here 2 years into this thing, and you've got Nunes and Schiff's investigation, which is basically over. You've got basically everything that leaks like crazy from the Justice Department. It just seems like if we were this far into it, we would have some pretty solid stuff.
The only problem I have, though, is like, especially on the House side, is that didn't feel like an investigation at all. I mean, what for either side, I felt like it was obviously more political than investigative, and especially when you go back and just look on how both Schiff and Nunes played it all out, and they played it a lot in the media, or they played it a lot with trying to build up their base and keep the hype going. There wasn't, I mean, we didn't get a lot of info out of it. There was a lot of just back and forth conflicting reports. So yeah, I
feel like a lot of that was more about establishing new power bases in the individual parties post-election.
Yeah, exactly. So speaking of investigations and looking into things, there's a new hashtag in town, right? Spygate?
Yeah. Let's get our Spygate on for this week's episode. We got a few things to cover in here, starting out with Trump branding down hard, as he does.
Yes, he does.
Branding down.
That controversial claim pushed by the president.
We now call it Spygate.
With no evidence to back him up, as he implies the FBI planted a spy on Team Trump.
Sir, what proof do you have that your campaign was spied on?
All you have to do is look at the basics and you'll see.
An FBI informant did talk with several members of the Trump campaign in 2016 as part of a bigger investigation into Russian interference. That's broadly accepted. What's not? The president's insistence it was all political.
When they look at the documents, I think people are going to see a lot of bad things happen.
That document review set for tomorrow. A look at highly classified materials to which only 2 Republicans are invited now.
If you're going to show up with an open mind and closed lips.
Democrats want in.
If the meeting goes forward as planned right now, it will be a sham. It will be a sham.
The president not opposed to a bipartisan briefing.
This issue supersedes a party. This supersedes Republicans and Democrats.
Whoa. Now,
supersedes.
You know what? That's I agree. It shouldn't be one side or the other. If it is truly something that the FBI has done wrong here, everybody should be concerned. I fully agree with the president here.
So the meeting took place.
Yes, it did.
And your good buddy, Trey Gowdy.
Gowdy mode activated. Yes.
Yeah, he went, and so he came on Fox and CBS to share his thoughts. Remember, he was the guy in that clip there just to go in with an open mind.
Go in with an open mind.
He came out saying something I didn't expect him to say.
Right.
He's debunking Spygate in his interviews today.
I couldn't believe it, but check this out.
President Trump is doubling down on his claim that the FBI had what he calls a spy in his campaign.
So how do you like the fact they had people infiltrating our campaign? Can you imagine?
By the way, the words that the president uses, infiltrate, it wasn't really infiltrated, but there I say, words are words.
I agree. The word is obviously designed to sort of galvanize.
Oh yeah, and inflammatory.
But I don't also want to lose perspective on this guy and who he was and what he did in the 80s too. Like that also, like we talked about last week,
right.
It does have to weigh in somewhat to the conversation.
Absolutely.
Can you imagine?
The president repeated his claim in Nashville last night. He said last week that the use of an informant could be, quote, one of the biggest political scandals in U.S. history. Republican Congressman Trey Gowdy of South Carolina is chairman of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee. He attended a classified Justice Department briefing last week in response to the president's allegation. Good morning, Congressman.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm well. You have looked at the actual evidence here in this briefing. The president has not. You said, having looked at this, you said, I am even more convinced that the FBI did exactly what Americans would want them to do when they got the information they did. Why did you say that? How can you be so sure?
Well, when the FBI comes into contact with information about what a foreign government may be doing in our election cycle, I think they have an obligation to run it out. I think the FBI, if they were at the table this morning, they would tell you Russia was the target and Russia's intentions toward our country were the target. The fact that 2 people who were loosely connected with the Trump campaign may have been involved doesn't diminish the fact that Russia was the target and not the campaign.
So you looked at this and you said what the FBI was doing was kosher. Why does the president keep saying what he's saying when he knows better?
I don't know.
Oh.
Wow. And do you see that little grin on Trey Gowdy's face?
it's interesting just listening to the questioning back and forth. He's really going for this, and they're going all in. They really don't like that they're calling this a spy. Like they're really agitated by the story. The media has not let up on this.
And you know what? I dare I say, yes, I know I'm biased in this regard because, full disclosure, I'm an engineer at a television station. But that being said, when it really isn't a spy thing at all, it's not a Spygate at all, and the message is still being kind of just pushed and pushed and pushed out there by the White House and the president.
Yeah, okay, I got thoughts. Play out some more Gowdy, and then we'll talk about
more Gowdy mode.
Doesn't diminish the fact that Russia was the target and not the campaign.
So you looked at this, and you said what the FBI was doing was kosher. Why does the president keep saying what he's saying when he knows better?
I don't know. I've never met or talked to the president. I cannot tell you.
You've never met or talked to President Trump?
I have not.
But what he is saying, just to be clear, about this being somehow out of bounds, based on your experience and the evidence you saw, that's not the case.
Well, think back to what the president himself told James Comey. He said, I didn't collude with Russia, but if anyone connected with my campaign did, I want you to investigate it. It strikes me that that's exactly what the FBI was doing.
Let me ask you some specific questions. Was there a spy?
That is not a term I've ever used in the criminal justice system. Undercover, informant, confidential informant, those are all words I'm familiar with. I've never heard the term spy used.
So when the president says Spygate, that's not there was no spy inserted into the campaign. Have you seen any evidence of that?
I have not. That's an espionage term. That's not a law enforcement term.
You believe the FBI acted properly in this matter?
Based on what I have seen, I don't know what the FBI could have done or should have done other than run out a lead that someone loosely connected with the campaign was making assertions about Russia. I would think you would.
So I would see that's where I would kind of argue. I don't tend to think that Gowdy has a bias here, but and I think he's demonstrating that right here. He went to the meeting and now he's saying I think they did everything proper. The only thing that I would argue and I would like to know more about, which they don't get into, is why that individual. It seems like you know what you're getting when you go with that particular individual. His brand is what he did.
Right.
And so it seems like there is intention behind picking that person. I feel like that's where the FBI on paper can be legit, but in their actual execution can cut corners and maybe do something that is actually they know.
Now, I thought, though, I did read this in a different place, that the FBI did contact the Trump campaign early. Like even before this person was, I wouldn't call him inserted, but this investigator started to review this Russia stuff.
I don't know if that is true or not.
Yeah, I've heard this.
I'm not sure if that is true.
Yeah, and that's why I said I'm not sure if it's confirmed or denied or true, but the FBI reached out to the Trump campaign and let them know that hey, there's some weird things happening here in regards with Russia. That we want you to know about, and on top of that, if you had noticed anything weird, or and by the way, I'm totally paraphrasing, but notice anything weird, or if you get any strange contacts, to please let us know. And nothing ever happened. The Trump campaign never did contact the FBI, or followed up on those conversations. So I don't know.
Now,
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No,
I was just gonna say that there was somebody else who got to sneak into the meeting. Actually, a couple other people. Other people got to sneak into the meeting, and now this guy on MSNBC thinks this is the biggest controversy.
A new line crossed as the Trump administration's controversial classified meeting on the Russia probe got even worse because reporters caught Donald Trump's criminal defense attorney for the probe sneaking into the meeting. Let me tell you right up front. This is not normal. This is a breach. And tonight the White House is rushing out a spin that this breach was actually some kind of legitimate move and planned all along. That is false. This inappropriate meddling into the probe is actually so incriminating the White House sought to hide it from ever being public. Let me show you.
Wow. So I heard about the latter. I heard about lawyers from the White House team was trying to get in on this meeting, and that I thought that they got in and then they got kicked out or they left on their own. I didn't realize the first part.
Yeah, and he seems to think it's a big deal. But the reason why I kind of question how big of a deal it is because it sounds like everything that was going down in that meeting, there's been a second meeting where another group of people were briefed, the Gang of Eight, and there was going to be, or there may still be, I don't know, a meeting with Trump's lawyers to review the same document. So I don't really quite grasp what the big deal is, other than the Democrats didn't get to go.
Right.
But yeah. I don't really have any more. We could play more of it if you want, but I just thought that.
No. I mean, but do you agree or disagree with the legal team trying to get in on this meeting and getting in on that?
I agree. It looks bad. I think functionally the results are probably the same.
Right.
But I agree that I think it looks bad. Also, we know what's looking bad is the fact that Trump is not letting up on Sessions. Although I love it.
He's back again. I mean, because it's come in waves.
I love it. I actually love it.
I know. It's poor Jeff here. I mean, poor Jeff, buddy.
I hope he's not checking
President
Twitter.
Trump is once again attacking his own attorney general, Jeff Sessions. This morning's attack comes after the New York Times overnight reported that the president tried to convince Jeff Sessions to take back control of the Russia probe. But that probe now includes digging into why the president tried to do just that and if it is obstruction of justice. Our Shimon Perkins is in Washington with more. The president not holding back on this one.
No, and he certainly hasn't held back. In the latest series of tweets, he essentially says that he wishes he had picked a different attorney general. Now, the New York Times reporting that the president in March 2017, just after Sessions recused himself from the Russia investigations, that when Sessions flew to Mar-a-Lago to meet with Trump, they had dinner, and that Trump there at that dinner berated the attorney general and told him he should reverse his decision to recuse himself from the Russia investigation. Now, the Times says that that was an unusual and potentially inappropriate request and that Jeff Sessions refused Trump's request. Now, the New York Times, as part of the special counsel's investigation, is looking at this meeting. It's part of its obstruction investigation, as well as the repeated attacks on Sessions by Trump in the media and on Twitter. And, Poppy, as we've
Here's why I don't think this is why I don't think it's quite fair is I think Trump should just simmer down and wait for the investigation to get over, and then he should just fire Sessions. I don't know why he doesn't just behave himself and do that, but I don't think he's necessarily wrong in the fact that he's getting screwed by Sessions. So Jeff should have advised Trump before he ever accepted the job as the top lawyer that he would have had a conflict of interest here as being a member or being connected to the campaign.
Right.
That should have been upfront a disclosure because there are lots, I don't know if you've noticed, lots of lawyers in this country that Donald Trump could have chosen from.
Absolutely.
That could help him manage what is going to be the most political moment in his entire career. Like this right here is the moment that needs managed, and his top lawyer is out. That would be extremely frustrating if I was the president, and especially because Jeff should have told him before he accepted the job, and this conflict apparently was already obvious to the Justice Department. So therefore, it should have been obvious to Sessions, or he wasn't the right guy for the job to begin with. So I can understand why Trump is upset, and I don't think he's necessarily wrong, but it's like you got to play it cool until the Russia thing passes. Then you can start cleaning house.
Well, and
just like cleaning Comey out too soon may not have been the right play. Maybe it was, but then it kicked off the whole Mueller investigation.
Well, the cleaning out, I think, first off, the cleaning out of Comey thing, and then, going on with Lester Holt, and then basically saying, the quote, he wouldn't let the Russia thing go. and basically saying that to Lester, I was, that I keep kind of going back to, and then I see this, where it's like, dude, president, you knew that this guy was a part of your campaign, okay? So he obviously had to recuse himself because
I guess I don't think that's necessarily on Trump to know, but
he didn't know that he was there. I mean, of course, Trump. I mean, he was on stage campaigning with him. To say that he didn't know, I mean, come on. I mean,
as far as what the Justice Department's, it's a policy it's a Justice Department policy that advised that would basically set the
I see what you're
precedents
saying.
Okay. Yes, I don't necessarily know if Trump should have known that nuance, but old Jeff there should have.
Right.
I just think he's kind of a weird old guy, anyways. That should get out of there and stop.
Is he just trying to push him out? Like, does Trump really not want to be the bad guy here, quote unquote, and be the guy that fires and try to really make Jeff so uncomfortable to get him to
like
leave.
That could be it.
That's what it feels. The play here.
But wouldn't that just backfire? Because if he did quit at this point,
right,
the narrative would be, well, Trump pushed him out with constant attacks.
So what's the point in doing all of this at all then? I mean, what's
every little thing, every little conversation Trump has with Jeff Sessions leaks? How's that a thing?
Right.
What's that about? What's going on there?
I wonder if Trump's Trump could be the one lead.
Could be calling up old Sean right before bedtime.
And, man, I don't have the soundboard up. But ding, yeah.
maybe it's Maxine Waters, because she has been hip to a lot of things from the very beginning. Old Maxine, she's sharp.
Reclaiming my time.
A word cloud the same organization did, where they asked for your sort of stream of consciousness. What's the word that comes to mind? Look at that. Donald Trump's favorite buzzword, witch hunt. Are you concerned that the general public, particularly, Republicans are just for Trump, so maybe we should discount that. But I even see independents in this poll, not even knowing that there have been crimes uncovered.
Yeah, I am concerned, but the way it has unfolded, there's so much information that's coming
out.
Right here.
All right.
This is going to be very demeaning. So prepare yourself for that. Take a deep breath before we continue on, because Maxine's going to go on about how stupid you all are. Unfortunately, she must not know about the Unfilter show, because we're changing everything that Maxine is about to say. But think about this. This is the reality in which she operates. This is her view on the world. And you can turn that around and see how some of the decisions she makes, the framework she might be using. So listen to what she's about to say, and then just let yourself marinate it for a moment. Take a breath, and then let's go.
All right. Oh, well, actually, one thing I wanted to add, Chris, before we let it marinate, is this 59% number. They falsely believe the probe hasn't uncovered any crimes. I mean, partially, I think that's because people are living in the confirmation bubble, and they're watching alternative or different networks where they don't really talk about these things that often. Obviously, some people are just completely turned off by the news and media and Facebook and Twitter, and they just they've had enough of this.
Yeah, it's really getting old.
Yeah, but man, I mean, we've heard about Mueller, obviously getting convictions and getting guys to say plead guilty. In regard,
I don't know about convictions.
Well, I mean, guilty is good as a conviction, right? I mean, obviously the judge is going to say you're going to get 5 years probation or whatever the charge will be for.
I don't think most of those guys are going to serve any time because they're outside the country.
No, that's true. Well, no, I'm talking like Stephanopoulos, or what are the guy's name?
Or Manafort, maybe. Yeah, we might see some action there. Yeah, eventually. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that might get people's attention.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough. So here we go, Maxine. Deep breath.
Talking down to all of us.
Yeah. Here we go.
Almost on a daily basis, that the average American just can't keep up with it. People go to work, they go about their lives, they may turn on television on the so-called news hour in the evening, or maybe catch a little bit in the morning, but they don't know all of the details, and they don't understand, how many countries have been indicted. 3 countries involved in this already. They don't know how many people have been indicted. They don't know. They may know about Manafort, or they may know about Flynn, but they don't know about Papadopoulos. They don't know about Gates. They don't know about the others who are entangled in this mess. But they should know this. They should know that something is terribly wrong, that there's all of these connections that have been uncovered with Russia. They should know about now the 2 meetings that Trump Jr. has had with Russians, and they should know that there was an attempt to create a back panel, a back channel.
A back panel?
Yeah, all right. So here's where I disagree with her, is she gets it right on some of the points. People are not able to follow all of the nuances.
Right, exactly.
But she gets it wrong on kind of the overall big picture. The overall big picture that she's painting is that nobody's keeping track of any of this stuff. And so it's not that nothing really major it's happened, it's just that simply nobody's paying attention to the details.
Right.
The problem is that paradigm does not exist in cable news, which is the reality in which she exists, is on a cable news show where all they do is talk about the nuances of this investigation all the time. So it's like this weird disconnect, because that outlet is appealing to people who are hyper interested in all of the details. And so it's a false representation of the actual audience. Anyways, Maxine says there's been a back panel all along. A back panel. I wonder if that's like a high data rate, like a fiber back panel or something, like some sort of like Russian backplane. But my favorite story about Russia this week was this journalist who was a Kremlin critic. And the Ukraine officials came out and said that they were trying to help him, and he was in the ambulance. And this Russian spy broke into the ambulance and shot the guy in the back of the head. Yeah. And now he's dead.
Right.
The problem is that guy just showed up at a press conference fully alive.
What?
Both the Associated Press news agency and the Reuters news agency in the last few moments have given us some quite stunning breaking news. Arkady Babchenko, the Russian journalist who was reported to be killed in Kiev, has shown up at a news conference in Ukraine. Mr. Babchenko says that this is an operation that had been prepared for 2 months, and he thanks the Ukrainian security service for saving his life. The head of the Ukrainian security services has said that they received information about a Russian plan to assassinate Mr. Babchenko, and they managed to prevent it. And
wow!
So the news story is now, he wasn't dead. We saved him at the last moment. So yeah. Isn't that interesting?
I heard
the story gets twisted.
Well, I think what it was is, he went to, collect his benefits, and they're like, sir, you're dead.
Yeah. Oh, must be a bookie there.
Yeah.
So last week on the show, I said that I think Trump is going by the Bolton plan, and the Bolton plan with North Korea is hard nose, hard negotiation. You don't let up the pressure, even after they've agreed to a summit.
Yep.
And then right as we got done with the show, Trump promptly calls off the summit with North Korea.
And I said, maybe he was playing a little bit of good cop, bad cop kind of a thing. He was trying to if it happens, it happens.
Yeah.
No big deal. We'll keep talking. But in the meantime, we're going to keep the pressure up.
Boom, bombshell.
Boom, bombshell.
The historic summit with Kim Jong-un had been on shaky ground. Today, that ground gave way.
I believe that this is a tremendous setback for North Korea and indeed a setback for the world.
A senior administration official says the president made the decision to cancel the summit after North Korean statements overnight, threatening the U.S. with a nuclear-to-nuclear showdown and referring to Vice President Pence as a political dummy. The president dictating a 3-paragraph response to the North Korean dictator, blasting Kim's tremendous anger and open hostility displayed in your most recent statement.
Hopefully positive things will be taking place with respect to the future of North Korea. But if they don't, we are more ready than we have ever been before.
Yeah. I like how Pence there, in the soft shaking of the yes. It's like
the
yes.
Pence look.
The Pence look, yes. Okay.
He's adopting it.
Yeah.
So North Korea has a reaction. Let's go ahead and play the reaction.
Or what do they think?
Now to that canceled summit with North Korea. Overnight, Pyongyang signaling it is still open to negotiations. This after President Trump sent some mixed messages saying he too would still be willing to sit down while also threatening possible military action. Our chief White House correspondent Jonathan Karl is tracking it all. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Cecilia. Well, the June 12th summit is off, but the North Koreans issued a statement overnight saying that they want to try again. North Korea called President Trump's decision to pull out of the summit unexpected and very regrettable, and urged him to come back to the table. We are willing to sit down with America at any time to solve the problem, the statement said, adding that North Korea is, quote, willing to give the time and opportunity to the U.S. with a generous and open heart.
Wow.
Earlier.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing that was interesting about this was the people that were preparing for the summit were continuing to prepare for the summit. But the other thing that was happening that was the bigger show that North Korea flew down lots of Western journalists that are a little more known to be North Korean friendly.
Yep.
They flew them down there to make this big demonstration about blowing up their test site.
That's right. Yeah, the North Korean. Well, and by the way, my whole theory on this thing is they've already just, all their testing basically destroyed the site in the first place.
Yeah.
So this is all obviously for show, but here's
makes hell of a show.
It's an awesome show. Yeah. Here we go.
Just minutes ago, we were having dinner over there, and now everything is being turned into a massive cloud of dust. Those barracks were used for living for the soldiers
Chris, is that dust radioactive?
You wouldn't you think there would be like a massive hazard to this? Yeah.
I mean, if it's a test site, why wouldn't there be anything nuclear-ish?
Well,
mean,
he
I'm no
says
expert.
we were just having dinner there, so that must have been like the lodge at the site.
Okay.
Soldiers and workers there. Well, now
Wow.
North Korea is showing that it is destroying the infrastructure too. Behind me is Northern Tunnel number 2. That's where 5 nuclear tests, 5 most recent nuclear tests have been conducted. Out of 4 tunnels around here, this one got the most battering. So basically, this is North Korea saying, look, we are ready to make the first step. This is the first step that we're making to show that we are acting in good faith. We are destroying all the facilities. We are being told that what has been done today has rendered this site absolutely useless. Now, they're expecting more to come out from the United States and international community. But everything here is happening amid the atmosphere of uncertainty. The latest rhetoric by the US President Donald Trump and his aides and Mike Pompeo, we are hearing from North Koreans that this is putting the whole thing in jeopardy. They don't know what to expect.
Oh my goodness.
They're saying that, well,
Wow.
Oh wow. Oh my goodness, that's so scary.
OMGs.
So yeah, what could happen? What could happen? Oh yeah, what's that? It's back on. In fact, Trump now says, yeah, it looks like things are going on. It's going to happen.
Mr. President, is the summit still off? We're going to see what happens. We're talking to them now. It was a very nice statement they put out. We'll see what happens. No, we'll see what happens. It could even be the 12th. We're talking to them now. They very much want to do it. We'd like to do it. We're going to see what happens.
We're going to see what happens.
We're going to see what happens. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it looks like it could happen while I'm in Texas. Isn't that weird?
That is so odd.
Yeah. Yeah, so the North Korea stuff was on and off again. So in the span of while we were off the air from one Wednesday to the next Wednesday, it was on and then off again. Oh boy, buddy. I hear the popo coming. They're coming to bust me for the Unfilter show. So you know what that means. It must be
I was going to say, it's time to check the sack.
You got it.
Yeah, thanks, buddy. No, so I don't have anything cool and creative to play for the sack segment. So I'm just going to go back to our own awesome theme song, right? Because it is the road show
for the people that are missing it during the road show.
Right. So remember, guys, during the road show, a little bit of a different intro, a little bit of fun. So here we go. We're going to hit the sack. And we actually got a great sack today from Club 33. Casey writes in and says, hey, I knew a North Korean denuke deal was too good to be true. But it obviously doesn't help when your advisor says, quote, Libyan model, in reference to the deal you want to make. Wasn't the Libyan model something Hillary pushed for? Trump has a bunch of crappy ideas of his own, and then he starts adding in the worst ideas from everyone else, including his opponents, to make everything even worse. By the way, breaking news, Casey, it's back on again. So Chris writes in, hey, I didn't know you wrote in, Chris. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's me.
Chris writes in and says, hey, what about the staged murder of a Russian journalist in Ukraine? Well, yeah, what about it? We'll have to hit the DVR and check that out. Mr. John writes in and says, hey, just read a Judicial Watch article about the Awan spy case and how there are constant delays and the fact that the D.C. police gave a boatload of evidence to the defense attorneys instead of the prosecutor make a huge fishy smell around the Capitol.
I really want to know more about that story so bad. There's no news coverage on that.
Yeah, very, very little. Some big fish must be in fear of exposure to let something this blatant go unpunished for so long. Debbie even waved given the Awan's background check when she hired them to run the Dems' IT. Where is the Justice Department? Maximum distraction going on. Keep up the great work, boys. Unfilter is my go-to show each and every week. And last but certainly not least, Mr. Veratuna chimes in and says, hey, been really busy. It's a short week here, but aside from the weirdness that came out of Kiev with the SBU suddenly giving a press conference to a journalist they said that was killed earlier and were investigating as a sting operation, it was totally bizarre. I think the SBU really have cornered the definition of the world's fake news there.
Yeah. I don't trust anything coming out of there anymore. Hey, also, I want to give a shout out to our three new subscribers this week, Nintu, Tom Carew, and Dermakis. We have 3 new subs, and I want to remind you guys, you can get in Chase's mail sack by going to the Patreon page and joining Club 33. You can still contact the show with your thoughts, though. It just doesn't necessarily make it on air.
Right.
Unfilter.show/contact. We've had 3 new subs this week, but we're still way behind on people's cards on Patreon, so we could really use your help because we've had about a dozen people go write their card, but we've also had people just pull out in general and just say, I'm done with Patreon. So we could really use your support at patreon.com/unfilter because the show's a little upside down at the moment with still about almost 85, 90 cards or something like that.
Wow.
They're declining on our Patreon.
Wow.
So use your help on that. Patreon.com/unfilter.
Yeah, and the final notes, by the way, from Verituna, he also writes in and says, something you might not have heard of was Bill Bowden, one of the most infamous Chicago Cowboys who, with the help of the Clintons, plundered Russia in the early 90s, Google Ann Williamson, grandstanding his release from Spanish police as a victory against Putin, forgetting that he was already been exposed as a criminal in the U.S. It was also shown this week that ISIS, or ISIL, or Daesh, are being funneled with the aid of the U.S. through Afghanistan and towards Europe. Thanks, Deep State. At home, the Grenfell inquiry has just kicked off with the 3rd day of victims' family having their very emotional say about their loved ones and their treatment following the fire. Heartbreaking stuff, really. Really wish I could watch this show live tonight, but really, I have so much to do. Thanks for putting the live stream up for us Patreons to watch later. I cannot express how grateful I am to not miss a beat. Thanks for that. And make it a good one. Remember, as Chris mentioned, you can be a part of Club 33 today. Head on over to patreon.com/unfilter. And if you are a Patreon, don't forget to update your credit card info. We really do appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, everybody. And now it is time for that
Mommy
high note.
needs a joint.
You know what that means.
Yeah.
Yes, she does. She really does. She's kind of whiny about it, too. Have you noticed that? Listen
a joint.
A joint.
So whiny.
She wants to make sure that we all know about it, I guess.
She's frustrated about it.
Yes.
Frustrated.
Yes.
I like this story out of Detroit, not because it's about a pot bust, but because they're really ramping it up. I've noticed for the last 6 months, they're just really ramping these stories, and now they've really kind of nailed the narrative. Go ahead, Mr. Chase.
Here we
Kick it
go.
off with our first one.
Pot bust.
This is a very, very sophisticated operation.
Police and Border Control seizing hundreds of plants that were part of a major grow operation in Detroit.
Tonight, what tipped law enforcement off and how many people are behind bars in connection to this operation.
It's our top story at 10.
And thank you for joining us tonight for 7 Action News on TV 20 Detroit.
Detroit police teaming up with Border Patrol to take down the illegal growing operation today. It came up after a tip that law enforcement officials literally sniffed out.
Okay.
Investigator Simon Shaquette takes us inside the warehouse on the city's southwest side that is now closed for business. Simon.
Detroit police tell us they've recovered an unprecedented amount of illegal drugs being grown right here at this warehouse. In fact, there's so much of it, they say the street value exceeds $1 million. Inside this...
I always wonder, how do they figure that out?
Yeah, I don't know. Do
they have a calculator drugbustcalculator.com or something like that where they just go to type in how much they have and they just get
You also got to figure at that quantity, at that scale, if one or two plants were to disappear into the back of a cop car, nobody would ever notice.
Right.
I just can't believe there's not somebody who's just stealing a little on the side when a bust like this goes down.
Highly advanced green garden. Pot plants bear names like Gorilla Glue 4 and Star Dog. Turns out these drugs...
Wait a minute. Let me back that up a little bit because I don't know if you noticed, okay? So he said Gorilla Glue 4 or whatever, right? How would he know that's what that is? It just says GG4.
Maybe they Googled it? I don't know. Or maybe they had records.
Does he? Maybe he took a sample and he asked what it was. That's just I just caught that.
The guy knows his weed, man.
I guess so.
And Star Dog. Turns out these drugs found inside multiple grow rooms are so potent, they also failed a smell test.
Border Patrol was doing an investigation last week and smelled a strong odor of marijuana coming from this clandestine building.
Soon after, police were all over this facility.
Clandestine building.
half the.
That's
I'm sorry.
Not,
I'm sorry
not,
for
not a regular building. It's a clandestine building.
and my apologies for any of our fans from Detroit, but I bet you guys have more than one or two of those types of buildings. I mean, we have loads of those buildings here. I'm just saying.
West Jefferson, at about 4 p.m. today, they made their way inside, only to find a chronic case of whodunit. A handful of folks watching over the dope, but no one admitting it was theirs.
When they came in execution, the raid commander froze them, got them in custody.
High-tech lighting, a scientific laboratory, security cameras, and old-fashioned Ziploc bags are now all part of the evidence. Investigators say whoever's behind these fields of weed will have to face some sticky charges very soon.
Oh my God!
I agree
Stop
with the chat
with the
room.
puns.
Is they're basing it on the street value based on the grams, and they're probably weighing the entire plant. So if they've got the stems in there, the branches in there, maybe even some of the dirt, because there ain't no $1 million
the
grow
soil
operation
alone.
that doesn't have a few filters. They're going to have air filters.
But the puns, come on, WXYZ.
You can see from the lighting that they use, how it's on the timer and different things for the plants, for the marijuana grow. I would say a lot of man hours, a lot of money to put this together.
Police tell us right now a total of 6 people remain in custody in connection with this bust. They say they also worked hard on this case with cooperation from the United States Border and Protection Office. From downtown Detroit, Simon Shaquette, 7
Good.
Action News.
I'm always glad when they can work a little federal agency angle in there.
Well, to be fair, Detroit, right there on the Canadian border. So of course,
those damn Canadians, dude, and their legal weed. It's just going to get worse and worse.
I know.
The FDA, speaking of federal agencies, is on the verge of approving medicine that's made from cannabis. CBD, I believe.
They're using their patents, huh? Okay, all right.
FDA is on the verge of possibly approving the first medicine made from marijuana, and it could be a game changer for some patients diagnosed with 2 devastating forms of epilepsy. And researchers here in Boston say this works.
The seizure started when Margot Curtis was just a toddler, and over time, her mom, Carrie, says they happened more often and became more severe.
Grand mal seizures, a lot of seizure activity at night. She wasn't sleeping. All of a sudden, just start screaming and having convulsive seizures.
The seizure activity was so extreme, Margot couldn't learn basic skills, and the medication she was on didn't do enough.
They weren't controlling the seizures.
2 years ago, Margot was diagnosed with Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. It's a severe type of epilepsy that's often hard to treat until now. A drug called Epidiolex shows promise. It's an oil made from cannabidiol, a component of the marijuana plant that does not make people high. Dr. Elizabeth Teal is the director of the Pediatric Epilepsy Program at Mass General Hospital. She's also the lead investigator in an Epidiolex trial for patients with Lennox-Gastaut. What they found, an almost 44% drop in monthly seizures.
So that's significant.
Wow.
And a parent could tell you that if my child was having 20 seizures a day, if you could knock it down 44%, even though they weren't yet seizure-free, that would likely be the best seizure control it ever had.
Researchers aren't sure.
Yeah, with less side effects, too, which is the other key thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the big deal. And it's the big story there is really that the FDA is getting on board with that. But we do have some good news for our listeners in the Florida area.
Yes, if you're in Florida, get ready. As long as you have a medical condition, of course.
Oh, yeah, right.
Julie, thank you. And new at 11, a major victory for people pushing to smoke marijuana. A judge is ruling that people with a prescription for medical marijuana are now allowed to smoke it. Florida voters made the drug legal in 2016. The judge believes that a ban on smokable cannabis is unconstitutional. Florida's Department of Health is planning to appeal this ruling.
Why? I mean, why are they so hard? I guess it's Florida, I guess, but...
Yeah, exactly. You just answered it right there.
Yeah.
But maybe they'll take after New York. So check this out. So, it's party season, party season in New York. And the platform of the Democrats is, it's at least for this particular aspect, is one that I think should spread all over the country. Hit this one.
New York State Democrats were excited today, maybe even a little high. And it wasn't just that they were nominating candidates for statewide office. The executive committee passed a resolution calling for the legalization of marijuana, saying that millions could be added to state coffers.
What do I always say, Chris? Show me the money. That's right.
You always say it, Chase.
I always say that.
If it were taxed like
always.
alcohol at an excise tax rate of 13%.
The Democratic Party is excited about making this a platform resolution.
But for State Senator Todd Kaminsky, legalizing marijuana isn't just some progressive idea that seems to be sweeping the country. If New York does join 8 other states and the District of Columbia in making it legal, he'll be voting for just how it's done.
As a lawmaker, we have to make sure that it's going to be rolled out responsibly, that our roads are going to be safe, and that our children are going to be safe.
There are also political ramifications for running on a platform that calls for the legalization of pot.
If you're running statewide, legalization of marijuana is probably a plus for you because it's not going to hurt you in the city. It's not going to kill you in the suburbs. And upstate vote in a primary for Democratic governor is probably not all that important if you have the first two.
Political consultant Charlie King says it could cut both ways.
It still has to be something that has to be sort of test driven. So I guess that's the con or the challenge.
As someone who is running, city and statewide, you have to weigh the variables about the entire constituency that you look to serve and see what the temperature is.
People,
what's not getting discussed in there is human rights and people's own government of their own body.
Yes, yeah,
not coming up.
No,
not coming up.
Not coming.
But
up.
it is encouraging to see it become part of their platform.
Yeah, well, it's a step. And I know that maybe nationally the Democrats are still a little apprehensive as far as applying it to their platform. I mean, you see what happened up in Canada with Trudeau, and they established that as part of their platform, and they had a huge response to that, obviously, and legalization up there. So it's interesting.
Yeah. It is. Well, Mr. Chase, another edition of the Road Show concludes. I think the next time we connect, I will definitely be in Texas. I'll probably be outside of Austin a bit. Nice. And then after that, I'll be situated in Austin in the Texas area for a bit, and then in Keller for a bit, and then I'll be heading home again. So a few more Road Show editions, and then I'll be back in the studio, and I'll be back to the regular old Unfilter show.
Yeah.
So once again, Mr. Chase, well done running the board.
Well, thank you. If people now, are you doing any kind of tweeting during the roadshow stuff? Like, are you?
Yeah, sure. You can find me at Chris LAS. What about yourself? You on that? You don't have a Twitter account.
I do actually, thanks to my good buddy Devin. He was able to get me verified. Yeah, so at Nunes, Nunes on the Twitter. And by the way, just to mention about the whole technical stuff, next week after the show, I'm literally having to tear down my equipment because next weekend, and this is a shameless plug, I know, but next weekend I will be at the Northwest Pinball and Arcade Show.
Of course.
And it is once a year in Tacoma, Washington. It is an incredible place. If you live in the Pacific Northwest and you are a fan of old classic games, because they also have arcades and pinball, come on up. I'm actually presenting a seminar on Friday night from 7 to 8 o'clock where 2 champion pinball players are going to go head-to-head. And I'm going to be one of the hosts of that presentation. If you can't make it, don't worry. It's going to be streamed all live on Twitch. Geek Gamer TV is doing the streaming of the entire weekend of all the seminars, including mine. So please come down and check it out. Watch it online if you can't make it. It'll be loads of fun for sure.
Best of luck. That's gonna be a ton of work. So best of luck to you. And also a big shout out to producer Matt, who's been slogging through the news these weeks to help us continue to go. I'm on the road. It's been a big help. So if you're in the chat room right now, say a big thanks to producer Matt. And,
thanks, producer Matt.
Really appreciate it. Yep.
Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us this week. And Chris, great seeing you as well. And
thank you, buddy.
We'll see you guys right back here next week. Wait, did that record? Oh, wait, we have to do the whole show again? I'm kidding.